Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. I never thought I'd have to deal with something as bizarre as coming home to find a stranger living in my house. But that's exactly what happened after a weekend getaway with my girlfriend. We had gone away Friday morning for a little romantic weekend at a cozy bed and breakfast a few hours from home. I remember kissing her as we locked up and set the alarm on my modest two-bedroom house that I had recently bought after saving up for years. "See you Sunday night, house," I said jokingly as we walked to the car. Little did I know that by Sunday night, my house would barely feel like my own. The weekend was perfect. We ate great food, went hiking, and totally disconnected from the outside world. As we drove home Sunday afternoon, I was floating on a cloud, daydreaming about the amazing back rub I was going to give my girlfriend. I opened the front door, expecting the familiar quiet of my empty house. Instead, I was hit with loud rock music coming from the living room. For a second, I panicked, thinking we had been robbed. I grabbed an umbrella from the stand and motioned to my girlfriend to stay behind me. As I slowly approached the living room ready to swing, I saw a blonde woman in her 40s lounging on my couch, flicking through TV channels and sipping a glass of my wine. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, still wielding my umbrella weapon. The strange woman turned to me calmly, not an ounce of surprise or guilt on her face at being caught red-handed. "It's about time you showed up," she said rudely. "I was wondering how long it would take for you to get back from your little vacation." She even used air quotes, as if the idea of me taking time off was ridiculous. "Lady, I'm calling the cops if you don't tell me what you're doing in my house in the next 10 seconds, I said, reaching for my phone. Calm down," she sighed dramatically. "If you must know, I'm Karen. I needed a place to stay for a few days, and your house was just sitting here empty, so I borrowed it." My mouth fell open in shock. "You broke into my home while I was away and decided to borrow it for yourself?" I couldn't believe the audacity and entitlement of this woman. "I prefer the term occupy," Karen said matter-of-factly. "And I didn't break in, the back door was unlocked. You should really be more careful." Now she was lecturing me about home security? Unbelievable. I told her she had 30 seconds to take her stuff and get out before I called the police. Karen sat up angrily. "How dare you? Do you know who I am? I'm on the board of the Oak Grove Homeowners Association, and I contribute a lot to this neighborhood. I kept watch over your house all weekend, you ungrateful punk. Someone could have broken in and robbed you blind." I had to stop myself from laughing out loud at her ridiculous justification. "I don't care if you're the mayor. You're trespassing. Get out or I'm calling the cops." At this point, Karen leapt up from the couch and got right in my face, her wine breath hot on my skin. "You entitled millennials make me sick. You go on your avocado toast vacations while hardworking people like me struggle. I needed a place to stay and your house was available. Don't you believe in sharing? If you were a decent human, you would let me stay as long as I needed." I had to resist every urge to shove this entitled psycho out the door forcibly. Luckily, my girlfriend stepped in and gently tried to reason with Karen while steering her towards the front door. I grabbed my phone and dialed cops, keeping my eyes locked on Karen in case she tried anything crazy. She screamed at me that I was heartless and soulless as the police finally showed up 20 agonizing minutes later. The officers interviewed Karen and me separately. She spun some wild sob story about losing her home and needing temporary lodging, saying she thought my house would be fine since I'm never around anyway. I calmly explained the facts and showed the officers proof that I owned and lived in the house and had been away for the weekend. In the end, Karen was arrested for unlawful occupation and destruction of property, since the wine glass she used was an antique heirloom from my great-grandmother. Even as the cops put cuffs on her, she continued hurling insults and threats at me. I almost felt bad watching them put her in the back of the squad car, until I remembered that less than an hour earlier this deranged woman had been making herself at home in my house. The cops told me I could press charges, which I did immediately. No way was I letting her get away with it. Karen ended up being sentenced to 6 months in jail after pleading guilty to avoid a longer sentence. I also filed a restraining order, not taking any chances that she might seek revenge someday. The police reassured me that Karen has a history of mental health issues, and I shouldn't take her verbal attacks personally. Still, the experience left me feeling violated. The idea that a total stranger felt entitled to not only enter my home but also occupy it made my skin crawl. For weeks after I found myself double and triple checking the locks, installing a security system, and barely leaving the house. Over time, the paranoia faded, but I will never forget that psycho Karen. She took something from me that day, my sense of safety and sanctuary in my very own home, and I'll be damned if I ever give someone the chance to take advantage of me like that again. I sure learned the hard way to be more careful and vigilant with my home security from here on out. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I used to do part-time volunteer work for a local park. It was pretty basic stuff like picking up trash and light security, which was just making sure that people aren't damaging the park property or to report anything shady going on. This park was a fairly big and had a jungle gym in the back of it behind the wall of trees. One day I noticed that there are tire marks in the grass right where a turn out of the back is. It's fairly easy to make that turn and doesn't come out of nowhere or anything, so I don't know why someone would go through the grass. Also keep in mind it was very muddy and cold, so the tire marks were pretty much cemented in after the grass was ran over. I call my supervisor and they say that we will fix that area when it gets a little warmer out, which it was going to be later that week. A couple days later, when I am near the front of the park patrolling, I notice a minivan coming up from the back of the park. It goes right through the same area of the grass that was previously ran over. I couldn't believe I just witnessed it happen. The turn doesn't come out of nowhere, and you can clearly see that going straight out will take you through the grass. I start jogging towards the van, waving my arms to get the driver's attention. She stops and rolls down her window, wearing thick sunglasses, and looked at me confused at first. She also had 2 kids in the back. EM. What? Me? Excuse me, miss, I'm one of the park workers. You drove straight through the grass back there. With how muddy it is right there, the grass gets damaged very easily. EM. Okay? She clearly didn't care and shocked me a bit that she didn't apologize about it. Me. Well, the grass is going to need to be put back down. I understand if it was a mistake, but please be more careful when coming out from the back. I can tell she's giving me a dirty look, even with her giant sunglasses covering most of her face. EM. Whatever, she says rudely and drives out towards the entrance after I say thanks and back away from the van. Fast forward a couple days, me and my supervisor had finished flattening the dirt and putting down new seed for that area in the morning. I was pretty happy with how it turned out, and the grass would look better than it did before once it grew. Later that day, when I come back to patrol the park, I notice the same minivan in the back parking lot. I head over to the jungle gym area, and of course I see the entitled mom on a bench looking at her phone while her kids are playing. I was hoping in the back of my mind that she would have listened to me yesterday, but judging from how she acted, I was doubtful. I did a couple walks around the back area, making sure there wasn't any trash, and when I saw her tell the kids it was time to go, I sprinted towards the front of the park entrance, stand in front of a car at the front, and put my own pair of sunglasses on. I keep them in a fanny pack along with some medical supplies and my phone, so that she wouldn't recognize me and stay on the path, like how you slow down on the road when passing a police officer. Once her van starts coming up, I am watching in disbelief as once again she doesn't turn and goes right through the same area again that we had just fixed up this morning. I was pissed now. I walk up to her van, this time being in the middle of the pavement, and she stops when I approach, rolling down her window and giving me a pissed look that I stopped her again. EM. Oh my god, what do you want? Me. Miss, you ran over that area again. We had finished fixing it this morning and you just ran it over. EM. So, it's just some ducking grass. You should just make that whole area pavement so it won't get ran over. Me. You can clearly see that the grass is in front of you when you drive up from the back area. It doesn't come out of nowhere, and we've never had anyone run over that area. Only you. I had a frustrated tone in my voice, but was still trying to be polite. Her kids in the back were glued to their tablets and weren't paying any mind to me other than when they heard their mom swear. They looked to be around 6, 8, I think. She gives me one more nasty look before rolling up her window and driving away. Didn't even respond to my last point. Also, she almost ran over my foot since she didn't wait for me to back away from her van before driving off. That was my tipping point. I call my supervisor again and tell him what happened. I could tell he was pretty pissed over the phone, but said that he had a plan to stop that area from getting ran over anymore. I meet him on Friday morning, and he has this giant boulder in the back of his pickup truck. I instantly knew what we were going to be doing with it. After some work getting it down, digging up the dirt, and wedging it into place, we finished putting the boulder in. I had to admit that it made me sad that there was now this eyesore of a rock there, and all our work previously was for nothing. But I was happy the entitled mom wouldn't be running over that area anymore. Later that day, I'm in the back picking up trash when I see the same minivan pull into the parking lot. I know it's the entitled mom and her kids because I remember their license plate this time. I pay no mind to them, know that she couldn't run over the grass again when they leave now. Later on, I was cleaning some bird poop off a statue when I heard a loud crash sound that came from the front. I run over to when it came from, shocked as I see the entitled mother's van with the giant boulder we put down wedged between her tire and the bumper of her car. She gets out of the van in shock at what happened, swearing and shouting. I personally didn't want to damage her car, just realized she couldn't drive through the grass anymore, so I did feel some guilt at seeing the giant boulder wedged in her car. I came over to the other side to see that the wheel was off the ground slightly and the front bumper wedged atop the boulder. I don't know how she even managed that, honestly. She sees me and immediately gets a look of pure concentrated anger. You! She starts walking up to me, stomping her feet. You put that rock there, didn't you, a hole? Me. Miss, my supervisor brought that boulder in this morning for that spot because you were running over the grass. I don't know how you even hit it since, again, you can clearly see it coming from the back. I was texting my friend you a hole, you're going to pay for this damage. Me. Yeah, I don't think so. She fumes and heads back to her car. She has her 2 kids get out and go sit at a nearby table, both still playing on their tablets. Though, got back in the car and is on the phone. A few minutes later, she tells me she called the police and that I'm going to be arrested for intentionally damaging her property. I admit I was a bit worried at what story she gave them probably wasn't the truth, so I called my supervisor again. He got here even before the police did. I saw him laughing as he pulled up and saw the situation. He walks up to the entitled mom and explains who he is, and she starts yelling at him about how she's going to sue and have him and myself arrested for the damage. A few minutes later, the police pull up. She tells them that we intentionally put that rock there to damage her car. But we explained to the officers that she had drove over that grass several times, even after we had fixed it, and we put that boulder down to keep her and others from driving through the grass. The police got some more information from us and told the entitled mom that we were in the right to put the boulder down and aren't liable for her poor driving. Frustrated, tells her kids to get back in the car and actually starts to back out off the boulder. My supervisor, the officers, and I all watch as the boulder is scraping up the bottom of her car as she backs out. Once off it, her front bumper slams on the pavement and is now hanging down off the left side. Something under her car was also touching the pavement, which was apparent as she started to drive away, and the sound of something scraping against the road could be heard. The officers stop her and tell her that her car is now not safe to drive on the road, and she needs to get it towed. My supervisor and I went home shortly after, smiling and laughing at what had happened that day. I can safely assume now she won't be going over that grass anymore. The next one is a petty revenge story. Not my story, but my nanny's. And this happened decades ago. I caught up with my nanny recently, and I was reminded of this story. The dialogue isn't accurate, obviously, but hopefully you'll get the gist of it. My siblings and I had a part-time nanny growing up since both our parents worked. Her job was to pick us up from school in the afternoon, drive us to after-school activities, bring us home, and prepare dinner. We lived in a subdivision where my parents owned 2 pieces of property, one property where our house stood, and an empty lot next door. The empty lot wasn't fenced in, and it's essentially a bare piece of property. This subdivision is considered small. Only 60 properties, allowing everyone to know each other. My parents moved there in the first year of their marriage and were literally one of the first families that ever lived there. Nanny started working for us when my oldest brother came into the picture and stayed with us for over 25 years before she retired. Everyone in the subdivision knew her and loved her. Nanny loved to garden, and my parents gave her carte blanche on the empty lot. She cared for that garden so much, and we had a lot of fresh vegetables and fruit growing up. Nanny could take home as much produce as she wanted as well. One day, Nanny started to notice that her harvest was decreasing and couldn't figure out why. There were bananas that she was sure was there a week ago that were now gone. The only harvests left were the ones that were already turning brown, etc. After finding out Nanny's concerns, my dad installed CCTV cameras along our perimeter fence that looked out to the empty lot where Nanny's garden stands. Sure enough, the CCTV catches a neighbor stealing Nanny's hard-earned harvest. It was a new neighbor, Karen, who was treating our garden as her own personal produce section. Karen steals at the oddest hours too when no one could see her. Think 5 a.m/11 p.m. Well, that didn't sit well with Nanny. We give away produce to our neighbors. If they ask for some, Nanny will give them away. The key word, however, is that they ask, not steal. So what does Nanny do? When Nanny was sure that Karen was the thief, she cooked an extra large serving of dinner one night and took some over to Karen's house. Her young son answered the door, possibly 8, 10 years old, and Nanny asked for Karen. When Karen came to the door, Nanny in a loud voice said, "I brought you dinner since I noticed that you've been helping yourself to our garden recently. I didn't want you or your children to go hungry." Karen was obviously red in the face and shut the door quickly. Without getting the food Nanny was offering, she missed out because Nanny was an amazing cook. Her son was right by the door watching the exchange too. It didn't stop there. Since Nanny knew a lot of people in the neighborhood and people loved her back, she connived with some other people to bring Karen dinner for the next 3 days. On the 4th day, Karen's husband dropped by the house and apologized for Karen's behavior and offered to compensate Nanny for whatever Karen stole. As far as I know, no one messed with Nanny ever again. The next one is a malicious compliance story. So once in my younger days when I worked a conventional job, I was making food at a lovely place called Quebec Tango, QT. It was nearing the end of my shift, but as what typically happens when you're working in the kitchen, you get an order right after you have cleaned down all your equipment and stocked everything. In comes a delightful lady named Karen. Karen ordered a very simple order, a pretzel with cheese dip. No problem. I quickly make the order as it is a simple one and hand it to her with a smile and tell her to have a good night. End of story, right? Wrong. Karen opened the box and clearly was just baffled by what she sees. She tells me the pretzel is all wrong and how I ruined night. I ask her what was wrong with it and she doesn't tell me. I offer to make her a new one and she accepts. I make a new one completely normal just like her order says and hand her a coupon for a free ice cream for her next visit. All is well. Nope. This time she screams at me and pulls a typical Karen and asks for my manager. I said sure and went to get her. Karen is now yelling at the manager, and when she finally tells us what's wrong with the pretzel, she said, "The salt grains are too big. You will remake this pretzel correctly." That's right. Karen got mad because the salt grain size was too large for her liking. My manager smiles and says, "Sure, we'll make you a new one." So we make the new one, and my manager crushed up the salt and put it on there and handed it to her. That's when Karen complained that they were too small. At this point, we have clearly figured out she wants free food and to complain, so we stop giving her what she wants. And when she goes to pay, she's charged for all 3 pretzels. She's mad about this, thinking we were going to give her the pretzels for free. But even though we typically only charge you for a remade one, a crappy attitude can get you things you don't want. The next one is an entitled people story. I went to a party for one of my wife's workmates during the mid-90s ES. I was at the bar getting a beer when I met the husband of the woman having the party. I will call him G for short, and during the usual first meet chit-chat, I asked him what he did. Big mistake. G, I am a gardener, but don't ask me to do your garden, okay? Me. Okay. Trying to figure out if he was serious or making a joke. G, yeah, I mean it. I'm not coming to your house to do your garden. I'm not coming to your house to help with new plants. I'm not coming to your house to give you gardening advice. I'm not coming to do your landscaping. I'm not coming to your mate's house or your dad's house. I'm not going to anyone else's house to do their gardens. As soon as I say I'm a gardener, mate, all I get is, "Can you do my garden? Can you mow my lawns? Can you plant some trees for me? Can you look after my mom's garden? Can you do this? Can you do that?" It's all I hear, so before you ask, I'm just going to stop you there, okay? I'm paraphrasing as I cannot remember exactly what he said, but he went on and on about it. Me. Okay. Thinking it was a good time to move on and meet someone else. G, what do you do? Me, I am an electrician. G, can you wire up my shed? I need lights and some power points. I was trying to figure out again if he's joking or serious, because if he was joking, it was a pretty good one. But nope, he was serious. I told him I'm a bit busy and then moved away. I managed to avoid him for the rest of the night. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.